I'm going to start broadcast now. It'll tell us.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Down, doobie down, comma down, doobie doo downtown, comma down, doobie doo downtown. UEB ain't hard to do. BLE is leaving me. My heart is in misery. When com goes, then I'll be blue. But UEB ain't hard to do. And for, of, the, and with, we're so tight. 2 and 2 by, snuggled through the night. Think of all the books we've been through. But UEB ain't hard to do. Basic code ain't hard to do. My fingers know that this can't be true. And my brain says, farewell, old friends. O'clock DDLI plus Ation. I say to all, thanks and goodbye. I'm really not going to cry. Oh well, baby, let's start anew. 'Cause UEB ain't hard to do. Down, doobie doo downtown, comma down, doobie doo downtown, comma down, doobie doo downtown. UEB ain't hard to do.
Welcome everybody to today's Wednesday webinar on Unified English Braille, a place to start. We started with a little song that was written by a teacher of the blind and vision impaired in New York City. And you have the link to it if you'd like to use it for anything. It was on the Path to Literacy website. My name's Debbie Pfeiffer. I'm the Director of Outreach Services for Virginia School for the Deaf and the Blind. And again, I'd like to welcome you today to UEB, a place to start. We have a pretty good turnout today considering that about 25 of the teachers of the blind and vision impaired from the Roanoke regional meeting already saw this presentation. And they were so pleased with the resources that Donna shared, that the other educational coordinators from DBVI that were present wanted Donna to come and visit all the other regions in the state, and we said we'd do a webinar instead. So just to give you an idea of who's here today, so that Donna can tailor this more possibly to them, we have 40 people registered, 33 TBIs, which is not surprising, 5 of whom are also O&M specialists. We have a parent, so that's wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, parent. We have a paraprofessional who works with children with VI, 3 people from Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, a few transcribers, and a principal. So beyond that, I'd like to just talk briefly about the logistics during this webinar in case you haven't attended one before. All participants, whether you're participating on the phone or you're listening and watching on your computer, you're all muted, so you don't have to worry about background noise in case your telephone rings or there's a fire drill or something in the background. During the session today, we're not going to stop Donna if we don't need to with a question. We'll let her get through her content first, and we'll have questions and answers at the end. But if you have a question, please, you can go into the questions box in your menu and type in your question, and I will write them down and we can ask them at the end, or you can raise your hand at the end near the attendees, where the attendees are and your name is there. You can click on the hand and we will unmute you at the end to ask your question. We also have Wanda Council with us from the Virginia Department of Education, who's on hand to answer any questions at the end that might be more for Department of Ed, and to give us a status of implementation of UEB in Virginia. You will be sent a survey directly following this webinar, and again 1 hour after the webinar. So I'd ask you to please provide your feedback. It's a very brief survey, about 8 questions, multiple choice, short answer, about how you're going to use this information, how the technology worked for you. I do look at these and it helps to inform our future webinars. I'm also asking for any ideas you have for future webinars or how to improve the provision of these. So those who do complete that survey will get a 1 hour certificate of attendance for 1 hour for attending this webinar today. So now I would like to introduce our presenter. Donna Mayberry, who many of you may know, has been a teacher of the visually impaired in Central Virginia for 25 years. Her undergraduate studies at Fitchburg State University in Massachusetts focused on teaching students with visual impairment, and her graduate studies at Grand Canyon University focused on literacy and reading. She has a passion for Braille literacy and has made it her mission to remain focused on Braille professional development and Braille literacy throughout her career. She obtained national certification from the National Blindness Professional Certification Board in both Unified English Braille and Literary Braille. And she's also received certification as a Braille transcriber by the Library of Congress. So, without further ado, I'll turn this over to Donna Mayberry.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for being with us today. There's one more thing I wanted to add. In your menus, there is a section that says Documents, and there are 5 documents that we've placed there for you. One is of this presentation in a PowerPoint format, and that I've also put it there in a PDF format just in case your computer doesn't like reading Braille symbols. And then the student progress check sheets and other things that I've uploaded there are for you to download while we are doing this presentation. So make sure before we log off that you've downloaded all the documents you need, okay? All right, so we're looking at a new Braille code, Unified English Braille. What you're going to learn in this webinar is we're going to do a brief overview of UEB. I am going to share with you some Unified English Braille reference sheets. I'm going to share Braille student progress check sheets that you can use in your school systems. They're beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, so you can keep track of their progress. We're going to talk about converting Bookshare files to UEB. How do you get books in the new UEB code? We're going to briefly talk about relicensure and how to get some points and credits towards that while you're learning UEB. And I'm going to touch on the national certification in Unified English Braille before we're finished. Okay, so your new best friend is the Rules of Unified English Braille, the 2013 edition. It is available as a PDF, or you can get it as a Braille file. If you follow the URL link in this presentation, it'll take you right to it. So any kind of training that you go through for Unified English Braille, it will say, refer to section 2 or whatever section. This is the book that they're referring to. This is a must-have book. All right, in Virginia, what are we using to learn UEB? A lot of people have gone to Hadley School for the Blind and taken the online course. VDVI offered Saturday seminars. A lot of people use the Update to UEB self-directed course, which is available in a PDF, a Braille file, and a Duxbury file. And there's a new textbook that the Vision Consortium is using. It's called the Ashcroft's Programmed Instruction in Unified English Braille. If any of you already have this book, I want you to look at your book. If your binding on the edge is white, you have errors in your book because it's one of the first publications. If you have a light blue binding, it might also have errors that you need to ask the publisher about. If you have a royal blue binding, this is the newest edition hopefully without mistakes. And that's what they're using in the Braille course through the consortium. Okay, so let's look at what Braille is not in the Braille code anymore. In Unified English Braille, they've gotten rid of a few contractions. O'clock is gone. The DD contraction, which is a drop-down D, is gone. The to contraction that used to touch a word is gone. Into and by that used to touch a word is gone. BLE is gone. COM is gone. Ation and alley is gone. For punctuation, the opening and closing parentheses is gone. The opening and closing square brackets is gone. Single quotation marks are gone. The ellipse is gone. Basically, in the new code, anywhere you see a dot in print, it is now a period in Braille, the drop-down D. So we no longer have an ellipse or anything like that. It makes writing email addresses a lot easier. You don't have to use the computer code anymore. The regular dash is gone, and the double dash is gone, and the square bracket is gone. For composition signs, the non-Latin letter indicator is gone. The accent sign is gone. Print symbol indicator, italic sign, and double italic sign is gone. General symbols that have disappeared, the pound sign, the paragraph sign, the section sign, the dollar sign, the asterisk sign, the end of foot sign, the caesura sign, short or unstressed syllable sign, and the long or unstressed syllable sign. Okay, the Braille alphabet in UEB is exactly the same as it was in the old code. The alphabet whole word signs are exactly the same as the old code, and you'll recognize A, I, O does not have a whole word. It just stands for A, I, or O. Now, when you're looking at the alphabet whole word signs, you need to understand what the standalone rules are. These contractions you can use them when unaccompanied by additional letters. They can't be next to any other letters. They have to stand alone, except they can be next to a hyphen and they can be next to a dash. You can also use it near common punctuation, which is like any of your parentheses or brackets, open quotation marks, periods, question marks, exclamation points, apostrophes, type form, and capital indicators. And we'll talk about type form in a minute because that's kind of a new word in Braille. You can also use these contractions if it's followed by an apostrophe plus a D, an LL, RE, ST, or VE. Make sure you download this so you don't have to take a lot of notes. Okay, punctuation. Punctuation is the same in many ways. If you look down the list, you'll notice the comma is the same, period's the same, question mark is the same, exclamation is the same, apostrophe, colon's the same. Dash is a little bit different. Blank line, if you're making a worksheet for a student and you needed a blank, this is the blank line indicator. It's a .46, and in the next cell it's a .36. You don't put a long line in Braille anymore. That's what you put in the place of a blank space. Forward slash and backward slash is a 456. The forward slash is a ST and the backward slash is a CH. Opening, okay. This is really important. This is a change. Do you see where it says opening outer quote and closing outer quote, opening inner quote and closing inner quote? So if you have a sentence that has two sets of quotes, no matter which one is on the outside, if you've got a single quote on the outside and double quotes on the inside, which would be really unusual to see, the outside outer quote will always be open. The opening outer quote is a drop-down H, and the closing outer quote is a drop-down J. If you have an inner quote within that sentence, you have the same symbols, but it has a .6 before it. So it doesn't matter if it's a double quote or a single quote. The one that's on the outside gets the open outer quote and closing outer quote symbol. Okay, so we got rid of all the parentheses and the brackets. What happened to them? If you look at the grouping punctuation, you can see what happened to them. All of the parentheses and the brackets have the same symbols in it. One has a .126 for the opening, and the closing part is a .345. And it's the same in each: open parentheses, open square bracket, open curly bracket, open angle bracket. But there's a different dot to indicate which bracket you're using. If it's an open parenthesis, you use a .5 before the opening and a .5 before the closing. If you're using an open square bracket, you're going to use a .46 before the opening and a .46 before the closing. So these dots that come before the opening and the closing of the bracket or the grouping punctuation tell you which kind of a grouping punctuation it is. Okay, all of the UEB short form words are exactly the same as the old code, except for o'clock has disappeared. So they are here for you to reference, but you don't really have to read through them right now. They're there for you to read through later. Okay? Okay, so now we have a new word in Braille called strong contractions. A strong contraction just means there is a dot in the upper cell, and there's a dot in the lower part of the cell, and there's either a dot in the left side and in the right side of that cell. So there's going to be a dot. You know, if you look at these, you'll understand what it means. So the strong contractions are and, for, of, the, and with. And in the old Braille code, we used to sandwich those. You had to use them touching each other. In UEB, you no longer have words touching each other no matter what. That's why they got rid of the to, the into, and the by. And for of, the, with, you now need a space in between each of those words. You can still use them within words, but when you're using them as those words, they have to have a space. Every word in a sentence has to have a space. Strong word signs are still child, shall, this, which, out, and still. When they're standing by themselves, that's what those contractions stand for. If you look to the right, you'll also notice the CH contraction just stands for CH. When it's by, well, excuse me, CH when it's by itself stands for child. When it's within a word, it stands for CH. That's the same for SH, TH, WH, OU, and ST. And the rest of the strong group signs are up at the top. You've got the GH, ED, ER, OW, AR, and ING, which is the same from the old code. Okay, so for you vision teachers out there, and for you working with younger children, you're not going to like one of the new rules in UEB. There's a general rule. You can now use contractions when they bridge a prefix in a word or a suffix. So if you look at my examples in the yellow box, look at mistake. Mistake. You can use the ST contraction now. Predate. You can use the ED contraction. So it kind of bridges right over that prefix in the root word. Reroute, you can use the ER contraction. And erase, you can use the ER contraction at the beginning of the word. I know that's a tough one when you're trying to teach little kids what a prefix is and what a root word is. But that's the new rule. You generally cannot use a contraction that bridges a compound word. So that's the only, you can do it with prefixes, root words, and suffixes, but if it's a compound word, two words put together, such as foghorn, you cannot use the G in fog and the H in horn. And the same with raw, hide. You can't use the W or the A. You can't use the WH contraction because it's two separate words put together. So if you can remember that, you'll be pretty good with the new rules. Okay, the initial letter, .5 contractions remain the same. The initial letter, .45 and 456 contractions also remain the same. Okay, we have one change here in the final letter group signs. They are all the same as the old code. However, they dropped Asian, which was a .6n, because you can use the TION sign instead of the Asian. You just, you know, if it's a word that ends in Asian, you spell it out to the A and then use the shun sign. So all of these contractions are the same as they were in the old Braille code, except they dropped Asian. Okay, so here's a big change in UEB. We now have Braille indicators. And I've tried to simplify it in this screen. So if you look at the first Braille indicator, it's the capital sign, which is the same capital sign that it used to be. All right, so if you're capitalizing a single word, you're just going to put a .6. That's the capital sign. If you're capitalizing the first letter in a single word. If you're capitalizing the entire word, you're going to use the double capital sign, which is a .6 and a .6. Okay? If you're capitalizing a single letter, or you're using the grade 1 indicator, which used to be called the letter indicator, or if you're using the italic sign, the bold, underline, or script sign. Script just means in print. It's got that fancy handwriting with the swirlies. That's what they're talking about when they mean script. If you're using a single letter or you are using that indicator for a word, you don't need to do anything else. You do not need to use the terminator. Okay? So if we slide over and look at what I boxed in, there is what's called a passage indicator and a passage terminator. Okay? So if you're capitalizing or using grade 1, italics, bold, underlined, or script for 3 or more words, you must use the passage indicator, which is the Braille indicator 3 times in a row for the capital and 3 times in a row for the letter indicator. And then it's different for the italic, bold, underlined, and script. An italic sign is a .46 drop-down G. A bold sign is a .45 drop-down G. Underline is 456 drop-down G. And a script sign is a .4 and a drop-down G. So when you use a passage indicator, that means anything coming after it is, let's just say italicized. We'll use the italicized passage indicator before we start the 3 or more words that we're italicizing. We can go over a period, that's all right, as long as you've got that italic indicator at the beginning. You go over periods, you go, through the whole paragraph if you need to, if it's all italicized, and then you use the terminator at the end. After the period, you use the terminator to say this is the end of the passage that is being italicized, or sentence, or 3 words. Okay? So if you're using 3 or more words, make sure you're using the terminator at the end. Okay, let's see, okay, so this is kind of tricky when you're using, if you look at this sentence, it says, "The Force awakens. Luke Skywalker has vanished. In his absence, the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes, ... Okay, so what I want to show you is at the beginning of, I'm going to ignore the Force Awakens for a minute, although it does have the capital passage indicator before the Force Awakens and the capital terminator at the end. Look at the sentence with me for a minute. We use the capital indicator before Luke Skywalker has vanished, period. Notice right after the period, there is no capital before in. And the reason is you're already in capital mode. So even if you get to the next sentence, you don't capitalize the beginning of your next sentence if you're in capital passage mode. And at the very end, if you look at, if you're reading the Braille along with me, at the very end it says, has risen from the ashes. Then you've got a drop down D, drop down D, drop down D, which is a period. That is the new ellipse. Anytime you see a dot, it's going to be a drop down D. And after the ellipse, there is the capital terminator that's used. I know that's a big change in the Braille code. It takes some getting used to, too. Okay, so there is what's called a nesting general rule. Okay, so the general rule is if you've got more than one indicator going on in a sentence, you nest them. So if you open with an indicator, that is the very last thing you are going to see. So if you look at this sentence, it's a bolded sentence, it's got a parentheses, and it's fully capitalized. And If you're not sure which starts first, it's okay if you start them in a different order. Just remember the nesting rule. So if you look at this sentence, I've opened it with the open parentheses indicator, and the very last thing you see on that bottom line is the closing parentheses indicator, because if it's first, it's got to come last. It's nested, okay? The second indicator in this sentence is a bold passage indicator. And the third thing you see is the capital passage indicator. So after I write the whole sentence, I end it in the opposite the way I started. So the last thing indicator I used was the capital indicator. That's the first thing I use at the end. The second to the last thing I used was the bold passage indicator, so that's what I end next. And I started with the open parentheses indicator, so that's what I end with. So it's kind of nested. You got one thing, the next thing, and then the next thing out. So just remember nesting when you're doing it. And if it's slightly out of order, that's okay, as long as you're using the nesting rule. Okay, so we got lower group signs and lower word signs. All right, so if you look at the top ones on the left, E, A, B, B, C, C, F, F, and G, G are the same as they were before. I consider them to be sandwich contractions because they must be preceded and followed by a letter. You can't use these contractions if they start a word, and you can't use them at the end of a word. Okay, so the next one's down, B, con, and dis. You can only use them if they represent the first syllable in a word. En and in, you can pretty much use anywhere in a word. Okay, so if you look to the right at the lower word signs, the lower word signs are be, enough, were, his, and was. You can use these near a capital sign, so you can use them at the beginning of a sentence by themselves, but you cannot use it at the end of a sentence near punctuation. Okay, so this next section, when you save the documents that I put in here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Unified English Braille Math, but I want you to have this information for the future if you do need to teach this in the future. The numbers are the same as the old Braille. They're in the upper cells. It's not Nimeth code numbers. They're in the upper cells. What looks a little different, if you look at the math signs and symbols, decimal is no longer a 4-6. Decimal is a drop-down D. The plus sign looks completely new. All the orders of operation look new. Not orders of operation, the signs of operations. They look new. Dollar sign, I recognize that from Nimeth code. There's a new symbol, which is a space, which is a .5. And then percent, I recognize that. That fraction line and the horizontal fraction line, I will explain that real quick. But these are just for your reference if you need to do UEB math in the future. Okay, so if you look at the next page, if you're writing a math problem in UEB, you use the number sign before and after your sign of operation. So if I've got 13 plus 2, I'm going to put a number sign before the 13, and I'm going to put a number sign before the 2, leave a space before an equal sign and after, and then a number sign before your answer. And I'm going to leave all of this in here for you to look at for further use. These, the examples at the bottom are 2 different ways that you can format a math problem. Okay, here's just a formatting arrangement if you do it horizontally or vertically. Those are 2 examples of how to set it up. Okay, and I pulled this slide up. It is a math problem. It's a subtraction problem, and I want you to notice that it's arranged vertically, and you see 265, and the plus sign is next to the top number to the right, instead of where it normally is to the left of the bottom number before the bar. If your if you're teaching Braille to someone who's sighted, you can move that minus sign back to the place they would normally see it in print if you need to, if they're getting confused with it being right there to the right of the top number. Here's some multiplication examples. And notice in the top example on this page, the multiplication sign for an X is different than the multiplication sign for a dot. You notice the bottom one has a .5 drop down D because it's a dot. Almost everything in UEB, if it's a dot, it's going to be that drop down D. Here's some division examples for you. And then I just put a bunch of different kinds of examples in that you might find in the classroom. If you look at 6:35 a.m., there is a number sign before the 6. You have a regular colon, a number sign before the 35, a space, the A period, M period. And this is what I wanted to show you with the horizontal fraction line. If you look at the first 2.5, the fraction 1/2, the numbers, one is raised and one is lower. If you have a fraction with a number that's raised and lowered, when you're writing that in Braille, you can just use the fraction line, which is an ST or a .34. However, if you look at the bottom example, it's 2.5 again, but all the numbers are horizontally even. If you have that, you need to put a .456 and then the ST or the .34 for the fraction line because it's all on the same level. That's one of the differences in this Braille. Okay, here's some more examples. The score was 4-7. You can no longer put 4, a hyphen, and a 7 without using a number sign. You have to put a number sign before each number. And if you look at the top, the score was 4-7. That's a dash line, the .6, and then in the next cell, a .36. And then in the next one down, you'll notice in print, it's a hyphen being used. So it indicates a hyphen when you're writing it in Braille, which is just a .36. Okay, and at the very bottom, I told you there was a new there is a space symbol, which is a .5. So look at the very bottom problem. It says 1947, 08, 31, and there's a space in between the numbers. In UEB, you can indicate that there's a space by putting a .5 there instead of hitting a space and a number sign, and because it takes up more space that way. You can just indicate the space by putting a .5 and not using a number sign. You can do it that way. Okay, special symbols. These are in there for your reference because you're probably going to need a lot of them, especially if you're doing math in Braille. Ellipse, you'll notice ellipse is different. So drop down D, drop down D, drop down D. Okay. All right. So one of the documents I have for you is a student progress sheet. Now, if you download the PDF format, it's checkable. So you can click on it if you're using a computer. You can click on the box and it'll put a little computer check in it. And on the very end of the pages, there is a progress sheet that you can use for the entire year, and you can indicate how many contractions the student knew at the beginning of the year in each of the categories. I've separated from alphabet word signs, .5 contractions, all the different kinds of contractions. And then you can go back mid-year and do the same progress check sheet, and then you can have the results side by side, and you can also do it at the end of the year, and then you have some documentation of how the student is learning Braille. You have my permission to use any of these reference materials I have created with students. Parents, you can use them, guardians can use them, teachers can use them. You know, another TVI that is teaching Braille, you can share it with them. And you may make copies if you're just going to do a paper, you know, check sheet. And I hope they're helpful to you. I also, one of the documents in the documents file is a reference sheet, and I was trying to do two things. I was trying to be helpful to TVIs that were learning the Braille, so it's like a cheat sheet. You can look at, okay, these are all the .5 contractions. These are all the grouping punctuation. That's what each one is. It's a reference sheet. You look at it and you can tell what you're looking for to type in Braille. But I also was going for a double use for it. I also use it as reference sheets for my students that are learning Braille that are low vision students. So the print is a little big in those sheets, but it's so that I can use them and my students can use them, and I didn't have to create them twice. Okay, so Bookshare. If you're not using Bookshare, Bookshare is a wonderful free resource in Virginia. If you go to www.bookshare.org, you can download Daisy books and you can download Braille books. They are open to any student in Virginia. It is free. It is a great resource. I use it all the time when I'm trying to get materials in UEB for my student without having to scan a book or anything like that. And the textbooks that I've gotten over the past year also have the pictures in them, the reading textbooks that I've gotten from them. Okay, so Bookshare, it's going to be coming out with a new option. I sat in on their trial of the UEB. They're going to give you the option as to whether you want to download UEB Braille books or old Braille books in the old format. Okay, they're not quite there yet. They're not. You can still download any book you want, excuse me, in the old code, but not quite yet in the new code. So if you are trying to put some of your materials into the UEB code so that your students can practice reading the UEB, these are directions in how to do it. And I went step by step. Make sure you download this document so that you can do it step by step. So when you're in UEB, make sure if you're gonna, excuse me, when you're in Bookshare, if you're trying to download a file that you want to put into Braille, make sure you select Daisy text only. Do not download the Daisy with the images. You only want the text only if you're translating into Braille. They have a little bit of a new system, so when it downloads, on the history page you're going to see available. You're going to click on available, and it's going to download onto your computer. If you're running Windows 7 or higher, you're going to see a little box in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. It's going to be a zipped file. You click it and make sure, if you look at the bottom graphic, make sure you click on extract all files, or you're going to be trying to open a zipped file and it's going to look all wacky when you open it, and it's not going to look like text from a textbook with paragraphs. Okay, so once you open the XML file, you can copy and paste it into Word if you're using Tiger Braille translating software, or you can open it, paste it directly into Duxbury. And the third tip, make sure you have selected UEB in the formatter settings. You have to make sure you change your settings in Tiger and in Duxbury. Make sure you're selecting UEB. And if you have a newer version of Duxbury, you have Abana UEB, which is the best choice for translating into UEB. Okay, so teacher relicensure, option 8, or in our school system it's teacher recertification, but the wording is changing at the state level. It is now teacher relicensure. You can earn up to 180 relicensure points learning the Unified English Braille. However, in your school system, you usually have to write a letter to a person, and your school system will know who it is. Write a letter saying, I would like to do a professional growth option 8 project because the Braille code is changing. This is what I would like to do. You have to get permission. And once you get permission, you can log every hour you spend, whether it's studying the rule book, whether it is learning the new Braille code. Keep track of it so that you can get points for relicensure. And although Virginia, the Department of Education You do not need to have national certification in Braille. However, if you want to aspire to getting a national certification, that is available. I got my certification through the National Blindness Professional Certification Board. The new UEB test, I took it with them. It's different than the last national exam. It's a 3-part exam. It tests Braille writing, Braille proofreading, and it has a multiple choice section. The book I showed you at the beginning, The Rules of Unified English Braille, you can use that for 2 parts of this test. You just can't use it for the multiple choice section, which kind of tests to see if you really know how to, how words are supposed to be spelled and stuff like that. And there are testing sites available in Virginia. I've taken the test twice in Richmond. And if you need more information, you can go to the website that is listed on this page. Okay, we have a save the date. We have a Braille Literacy Institute coming August 8th and 9th, and more information will be coming soon. And now we're going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay, thanks, Donna. We have had a couple of questions come through, and most of them you have answered. After they've sent them, they said, oh, got the answer to that on a few of them. I have another one here. How do you download this? I think you're talking about the PowerPoint. And if you look, there should be a place in your menu where it says Handouts 5 of 5. If you're unable to do that, don't worry. When I send out your certificates, if you answer your survey, I usually send the handouts again. I had a little bit of trouble connecting the handouts, attaching them. It accepted the PowerPoint, the rules, but the other ones, I'm surprised to see 5 of 5 there because they weren't showing that they had attached. So I will send those with your certificates. Make sure you answer the survey so you get your certificate and the handouts. Anna Kahn says, great presentation, Donna. Thank you. Let me go up here and see if anybody has raised their hand. In the meantime, I would like to invite Wanda Council, who is with us, to join us now to provide a brief update from Virginia Department of Education on the status of UEB implementation in Virginia, and make any other comments you'd like to make. Wanda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Donna, so much for sharing that wonderful information, and thanks to our interpreter, Aaron, as well. Many of you have been involved in some of the trainings that DOE has previously offered on UEB just as an introduction to Unified English Braille. We are progressing in the development of an implementation plan for Virginia with regard to UEB, understanding that the process for transitioning students, teachers, and materials into the new code is a process that's going to take some time. We are collaborating with the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired, the Vision Consortium program through George Mason University, and also the Virginia School for the Deaf and the Blind and AIM Virginia, in addition to having multiple statewide stakeholder meetings so that we can consider what the impact will be for student instruction for students, training for teachers, production of materials, and also our statewide assessments. We are in the final stages of finalizing our plan for Virginia, and that information will be shared with special ed directors and teachers in the schools. We're hoping that we will have that information available within the next couple of months prior to the new year starting with regard to the plan for Virginia. Donna did mention the Save the Date, the August 8th and 9th Braille Training Institute. You will be hearing more about that, and that will be available for all teachers who are working in Virginia schools who work with students who are blind and visually impaired. In addition, just want to mention that with regard to our current, this school year and the standardized, the statewide assessments, that those assessments are still being given and are available in eBay, English Braille American Edition, and Nemeth. We will be making a determination in terms of which math code we will be using, either UEB and UEB Math as one single code or UEB with Nemeth. That's one of the decisions that we are finalizing at this time to include in our implementation plan. So until you receive additional information about that, the statewide assessments will continue to be available in eBay and Nemeth. And certainly if you have any questions specific to UEB that you have questions about, I'm sure that Donna would be more than happy to talk with you some more at another time. You can certainly contact me if you have questions, and we're looking forward to further collaboration in getting things implemented here in Virginia. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Wanda. If people would like to raise their hand, I'm not sure what this looks like on your end. Wanda, Fran Post says hello.
Okay. Hi, Fran.
You can actually raise your hand next to your name by clicking on it. You see the little hand icon, and I can unmute you to ask any question that you might have for Donna or for Wanda. So somebody did mention that in the handouts, one of the handouts is given twice, the UEB reference sheets, part 1. As I was trying to attach these, the PowerPoint attached very easily, and one of the other ones did. I can't remember which one, but there were problems with the other ones, and I actually attached them several times because they weren't attaching. So that one is the same one twice, the UEB reference sheet, part 1. But you also have the Rules of Unified English Braille, UEB Student Progress Checklist, the check sheet, and the PowerPoint that you're seeing today. So I will again send these with the certificates, but if you'd like to download them from here, feel free to do that as we wait here for just a minute for you to do that. No hands raised. Wow. I guess you were very clear, Donna. There were not a lot of questions, so that's a good thing. I do send out announcements every once in a while from outreach services about family events. Some of you may have families that have attended the Sounds of the James trip, which we had on April 2nd. We're doing another one May 2nd. If it doesn't rain, it's Monday. It's the Bald Eagle Tour on the James River. That was really very educational and a great way for families to come together and meet each other and children to meet each other. If you work with a student who is pretty isolated in the school and they may have never met another child with a visual impairment, their families have maybe never met an older child or an adult with blindness or visual impairment, try to encourage your families to attend some of these events. They're always fun, educational events, and a great way for parents to get to know each other as well and build some support networks. We will be having another one in June for children that are blind or visually impaired, Where the Wild Things Are. Virginia Wildlife Center, which is located in Waynesboro, Virginia, not far from Stanton, will be bringing some of their rescued animals to VSDB, and we'll be doing some education on animals, reptiles versus birds versus mammals. This will be geared toward younger children and older children if they're interested in animals. So be on the lookout for that. We always post these on our website on the homepage as well as on TTAC Online under events. And the family events are in a different section. And your educational coordinators, I think, send these out to you. So I thank them for helping to market these events and the webinars as well. This training was brought to you by Outreach Services, VSDB. And I'd like to thank today especially Donna Mayberry for sharing all of the work that she's done, with you in this webinar and also in the resources that you're going to be getting as handouts. I'd also like to thank the NC-UEB team and also Carolyn Carver, a teacher of the blind and vision impaired from the STB, and Lori Floyd, who is a teacher of the blind and vision impaired from Henry County. All of these people proofread all of your reference sheets to make sure that there was no typo, so that you'd be looking at references that were incorrect. I had no doubt that Donna didn't make many mistakes, but it's always good to have another pair of eyes on it. I'd like to thank the Virginia Department of Education, especially Wanda Council, for providing the grant that funds outreach services, including these webinars, and Cavalier Reporting, who provides captioning for these. We do have captioning services today to make sure that these are all accessible to everybody. I'd especially like to thank all of you because you're out there in the field, and thank you for all of the services that you provide every day for students and for their families. So thank you. And Donna, I know if you could see people, they'd all be clapping.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, Donna, is your email address in the PowerPoint?
Yes, it's on the very front page.
Great. Okay, so people can contact Donna. Thank you, Erin. Did I not have our interpreter on there? Oh my goodness. Thank you, Erin, so much for interpreting today. I have it at the end of, no, I don't have it on there, my gosh. Thank you for interpreting today. This was an especially difficult one, I think, because of the .5, 6, and some of the terminology that people like us in the field of deafness aren't always real familiar with, but Erin, you did a great job with that. So thank you all, and you will be getting a survey, so please do submit that, and we will talk with you soon. Thanks again, Donna, and thank you,
Welcome.
Wanda.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.